Here we are on Backstage Pass Rock News. I'm Paul from VRP Rocks, and I'm delighted to be joined by JoelynnTurner, and he's going to be answering your questions. So, Joe, are you looking forward to this?
I am, really. Some very good questions here, and I appreciate the guys, the fans, for sending them in to me. It's always nice to reconnect with the guys.
It is, absolutely. So we've got some interesting ones, a mix of eras and things like that as well. So let's get kicked off with one from Fernando. He says, did you ever study vocal technique? Because he loves those awesome high notes you got, especially in Rainbow.
Yes, Fernando, absolutely. When I started out, of course, I'm a guitar player. That's how I started out, as a background vocalist. But when I started to take over lead in my local band, my father looked at me and just said, if you're going to build a house, you got to get a hammer. And I looked at him and said, well, what do you mean? He said, you got to get tools. I said, yeah. He says, you got to get voice lessons. So I said, yeah, you're probably right. He says, you have a natural gift, but you don't have any training. So I started looking around for a voice teacher. And I went through, I think it was about 6 voice teachers through the years until I finally hooked up with one, Martin Lawrence on 72nd Street in West End in New York City. That changed my whole way of thinking and performing. He gave me a pyramid method where you think the note before you hit it, the way you structure your diaphragm, the way you take in air, never in your lungs, but only in your diaphragm, and you support the note. And of course, when you're younger, your voice is much higher, so I could hit those notes, but it was all about the support. Now, Marty is not with us anymore. His son, Don, teaches. But I can tell you that he used to warm up Whitney Houston. He used to warm up Enrico Caruso when he would come to Carnegie Hall. I sent Bon Jovi to him. Okay? Because John had called me way back when and said, do you know anybody really good? And I said, this is the guy, Martin Lawrence. And so many other really popular, great vocalists that have gone to Martin. And now Don took his place with the same traditional, sort of pyramid program that I call it the pyramid because the notes get smaller as you go up. It's a whole way of thinking and supporting. So Fernando, yes, absolutely. It's the same with anything, Fernando. I mean, you have a natural ability, but get a hammer if you're going to build a house.
Fantastic stuff. It's quite interesting because when you speak to guitarists, they say you can never master the guitar. You never learn. You're always learning. So I'm guessing that's the same with vocals. You've got the basis there. You've learned the lessons. You've got the pyramid structure, but you must be always, because your voice changes, you grow, all that sort of stuff. So you must be tweaking and learning different things whenever you record something new or when you go back out on the road.
Absolutely. Look, it's no secret as we get older. There are a few anomalies, like my brother Glenn Hughes, who is an anomaly, but at the same time, as you get older, your voice deepens and you don't have the same trajectory and all that. Yeah, you can probably do something in the studio, but you're not going to do it every night on stage. The Brian Johnson trick. I mean, I remember Brian saying to me when I did a Back in Black cover, he said, well, you sing it, mate, because I said, I can't do that every night. You out of your mind, man. I don't know how you do it. That's just a whole nother way of doing it. So your voice does change, and I'm trying to sort of age gracefully. So I try to keep it in the right keys and sing the right melodies that are going to make me sound good.
Fantastic stuff. Right, let's move on to Patrick Moreau now. He says, I loved the Slaves and Masters album you did with Deep Purple. I saw the tour with Winger opening up for you. Were you disappointed not to do the follow-up record?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you liking the Slaves and Masters. So do I. And I think Ritchie even mentioned it's one of his favorite Deep Purple albums. Was I disappointed? Yes, in a way, because I knew I was an interim singer. I think Ian Pace had a great statement in the press one time that I read. And he said, Joe was kind of the glue that held Purple together in order to go from this point to this point. And without that album and without Joe being there, Ritchie would have taken off and done something else. And they never would have had that reunion with Gillan. Plus, I knew that there was something in the works with BMG trying to reunite Gillan for a large sum of money. And money talks, nobody walks. And I understood that. But we did work on the second album, which was The Battle Rages On, for them. And I do have some cassettes with me vocalizing over these tracks and so on. In fact, I did a song that I called Stroke of Midnight, that I co-wrote lyrics and melodies with Jim Pitterick from Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
And Blackmore's bluesy track. And they called it One Man's Meat. And we called it, okay? And the story is that Blackmore would play this on the PA, and I have this good information. He would play this on the PA before a performance because he was pissed at Gillan. So you know how Ritchie is. He just likes to, and he would play my version of the song. Hysterical, really, but it's typical Blackmore, you know? So, yeah, disappointed, but not really unexpected. You know what I mean? It wasn't, yeah. I didn't expect to. When we started working on that second album, I was like, well, I guess, okay, we'll work on it. But then the call came in and they made the deal with B&G, and I was shown the door and said, look, you know, we're reuniting with Gillan. And then I found out the inside where it was a very large money. And I said, hey, this day. And it seems that the older the album gets, the more people like it. Yeah. It's strange, because at first you got a lot of backlash. You know, hardcore promoters don't want any of this. It's a deep rainbow record, and it's this and it's that. Meanwhile, Purple had so many, you know, throughout years. It should be called that this was another incarnation. You know. So anyway, I think there's some great songs on it, and it stands on its own merit.
Absolutely. Right, let's move on to Paul E. Moz. He says, Odyssey is a fantastic record. In a perfect world, would you have liked to have done another album with Yngwie?
Sure. Look, I don't have a problem with Yngwie. Yngwie's Yngwie, you know. It is what it is. And it got a little bit too much towards the end. I can remember walking around Stockholm in the rain, cursing him, because he was just getting overbearing. It was just too much. And at times like those, no, you don't want to do another record. You know, you really don't. You need some distance between you to settle down. Looking back, I guess we could have, you know, if he was a little more reasonable at the time. But to be honest, I think he felt threatened, and maybe he felt he needed to go in a different direction. And if he's going in the direction that he's been going in lately, I don't know. That's a good decision, simply because he's not a great singer. He's not a great drummer or a producer. And, you know, I listen to the records and I go, wow, you know, geez, that's not going to make it. Then I listen to Odyssey and I say, whoa, you know, it's like a super, super piece of work. So I guess sometimes you're your own worst enemy, you know, and in this case, apparently Yngwie is his own worst enemy. But I have no problem with Yngwie to this day. What was done was done. What was said, you know, quote unquote, diary of a madman. So what are you going to do?
Absolutely. And you mentioned Ritchie before, we spoke about Ritchie before, and Yngwie as well. And obviously they're both known for certain reputations in the business. I mean, how do you go about kind of trying to work with people that are traditionally difficult to work with?
Well, I think I got a lot of experience from Ritchie. And Ritchie wasn't so difficult. He was, you have to understand, he has a reason. And if you have the sense enough to talk it out and say, well, you know, we worked together on that. Yeah. He did the same thing with the tracks too.
Yeah.
He did this guitar part over, step over, let's back here and do this. Right. Yeah. I see what you mean. There you go. Now you've got a teamwork happening. So that's not difficult. That's just, you want, you know, what's right, what's perfect. And that's what he is. He's more of a perfectionist than difficult. I mean, hey, he's a prankster. He's very funny. He's got a dark humor, you know, and once you kind of grasp that and you can turn some things against, you know, around at him, he enjoys that. He likes when you play the tricks on him as well.
All right.
So, you know, he could take it as much as dish it out. So he was easy to work with, in my opinion, because he'd always come up to me after listening to a track and say, that's right. You did it. That's right. Right there. You're spot on. You know, like when I did the Street of Dreams track, the vocal, he couldn't play the lead at one point. he went into the studio and I was sitting in the lounge, and he said, he comes in the lounge and says, I just can't get it. And I said, what? He goes, I can't play a solo. And I said, what's wrong? He says, your vocal is intimidating. And I said, intimidating? He says, it's a fantastic emotional vocal. Yeah, and I said, so this is what we want. I said, go in and play a fantastic emotional lead. Okay, let's go have a beer. Cracked open a couple of beers, talked about it, lit a few candles, went back in the studio, and he played a solo that I still can sing to this day. Melodic, beautiful composition, perfect for the arrangement. Bam. That's not difficulty. That's just teamwork.
Fantastic stuff. And I've got a question here from G. Varner, who says, how did you first meet Ritchie Blackmore?
First of all, I've always been a big fan, so to speak, of his guitar playing. Yeah. When I'm playing guitar and practicing, I'm always doing a Ritchie Blackmore lick, okay? I always took him as like my number one guitar player. And then I got a call from him in New York. I was living in New York and looking for a band because my band Fandango had broken up off of RCA Records and the whole thing. And here I am just slinging the guitar, walking around trying to get auditions and whatnot. And I got a phone call, and it was Colin Hart, our tour manager. And he says, you want to come and audition? Took a train to Long Island. They picked me up, walked into the studio, spoke about 10 minutes to Ritchie and Roger. And they said, get in there, get on the mic and start singing. They threw a few tracks at me. They started nodding their head. They pushed the button and said, do you write? I said, oh, yeah. So I picked up my writing bag, which I always bring with me, all my yellow notebooks and things, and started to improvise over different tracks. They liked that. Came in with a beer and said, here, you're in the band if you want it. And that was it. That's how I met him.
Wow.
Just like that.
So how did Colin Hart hear of you, or how did the band hear of you? Did you support them at any point, or did you just come across your Fandango before?
Don, Airy, and Cozy.
Ah.
They went to a club, apparently, in Long Island. And Fandango was playing one of his last gigs. This is the story I heard through very good sources. And they were impressed. They went back to Ritchie and said, I don't know, this guy's got something, and blah, blah, blah. So Ritchie listened to a few of the records, and Fandango, of course, was nothing like Rainbow. It was much more of an Eagle-y type band, that type of music. But he took a chance on the tone of the voice and the phrasing and things like that. So I went for the audition, and that's how I got in the band, through Cozy and Don. No, wait, I think there's a rumor that he actually came out and saw a show too, but he stood in the shadows. I don't know, but that's very possible.
He'd have to stand in the shadows, wouldn't he? Or be recognized.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got one here from Hard Rock Forever 2013. Greetings from Lima, Peru. What did you make of the breakthrough of grunge music in the 90s? And did you like any of those bands? And did you use any grunge influences back then?
Well, okay, grunge came along, and I'll remember the day. And when everybody's in what they now call classic rock, but everybody's heart just sunk down and just went, oh, no, that's it for us. Because Nirvana came out and several other Seattle bands and so on. And we knew that there was a big shift now, big shift. We could feel it. So it was, at first, it was really intimidating and disarming because we knew that something was coming that we had no control over at all. And we'd have to struggle in order to keep up with this particular sound. Now, did I like some of the stuff? Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so I've heard all kinds of styles of music right up into the present. And they all of these styles contribute to music, to the overall sense of where we're going, especially in rock. And I loved Nirvana. I loved the messaging, what they were doing. I loved the simplicity of what he was doing. I loved his arrogance and his attitude. That's what I loved most about grunge, was the attitude. Their attitude was very punk. And I remember hanging out with Johnny Ladd Okay, on Fifth Avenue, drunk as skunks in the middle of the street, cursing at cars. So I was well familiar with like the Sex Pistols and CBGBs and all of that.
When was that?
And,
Just to interject quickly, when was that? When were you hanging out with John Lydon?
oh, geez, I guess it was early '80s or what have you. I remember we got thrown out of the bar. Oh yeah, he just happened to be in town, I guess, and he was really back then. He was Johnny Lydon, right? Johnny Rotten, and he and I we hit it off because he was just so arrogant, and I just let it brush off my shoulder, and he says, "Oh, yeah, that's all right. You're all right, mate. This and that." So we started drinking heavily, and the people around us, and then the management came over and just said, "You guys are too much. You're upsetting all the customers. You've got to get out of the bar." And of course, we made a big scene. We ended up in the middle of Fifth Avenue at night, traffic coming both ways, or whatever, one way, and we were just cursing at all the cars. And after that, we ended up in somebody's apartment, and then it all went blank. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So my point was, I'm very familiar with all that. I lived in the East Village, West Village, so I was familiar with the little clubs, Orleans Grocery and everything, where all these bands played. And I'd go out to see them. I mean, it was great. The Ramones, come on. I'd always go to a Ramones show. So, yeah, I loved a lot of the grunge, especially when you had your Alice in Chains, and that kind of stuff. And I guess Velvet Revolver was kind of grunge. I mean, it started to change a bit too, grunge. It wasn't just Pearl Jam or what have you. It started to alter, like SDP and things like that. So there was a lot to choose from there.
Yeah.
But did I ever incorporate that grunge? No, I think just the attitude is what you incorporate. You take that angst, and that vibe that they give you, and then you put it into music that way.
Fantastic answer. Loved hearing about the Johnny Rotten thing as well. That was great. I've got one here from Placed Higher Than You, says Rainbow sound evolved from Ronnie James Dio era. Did you receive any backlash from fans about the way the sound changed?
Any backlash? I received nothing but backlash. No, actually, it was a lot of backlash. But I think that happens when anybody new comes into an established band, that the old guard really resents the new guard, and the old adage that people don't like change, and that's okay, because it was a completely different sound we were going for. Anyway, we were not trying to be comparative in any way. So yes, received a lot of backlash, and I always just kept saying, we are not, the Dio era. We're something else. We're more. Yes, are we more commercial? Yes, we are. We want to be. That's what we want. We want to get our songs on the radio. We want to be on the MTV. That's what we want. Okay. Ronnie's doing great, doing what he does. I love Ronnie. Ronnie, I knew from upstate New York when he was in Elf. Yeah. I mean, all these guys that played from this area, Lou Graham was in Black Sheep and all that. We all played clubs up there. I was in a band called Ezra. So I knew all these guys. And I had no animosities or jealousies or any of that stuff, because it was always a different thing. So backlash came from outside of that. It was the same with Purple. Big backlash. Only Gillan can sing these songs. And all I tried to do was do an admirable job of covering these songs like I used to do in my cover band, years ago, emulating my heroes. Whether it was Burn from Coverdale or Highway Star from Gillan or what have you. It's all I'm trying to do, and it's nice sometimes when you see, the comments like, hey, he's not Gillan and he's not Coverdale and they're not Turner, but he did a good job. And the other two refused to sing each other's songs. So you're going to get to sing that stuff. You're not going to deprive the audience of the song. So I tried to do a good job, and I think I did. But backlash, my friends, yes. Still getting backlash. They never forget.
But what must be nice, and we've spoken about this in the past when we've spoken, Joe, is the fact that you always had the backing of Ritchie. Ritchie was always there, wasn't he, to help you and guide you, and he never let you take too much of the flag.
He really was. In fact, I don't know where it was. I forget. Somewhere in my files, I came over, Blackmore's favorite rainbow singer, and it was me. I mean, wow. Not Ronnie. Come on, I would have thought it was Ronnie. No, because he loves ABBA.
Yes.
He's a melody guy. He really loves melody and that kind of composition. And so I guess that's how I got to be, quote unquote, a favorite singer of his, because that's what we did, and we accomplished what we started out to do. So, and I think that's how I actually got the job in Purple, is because he just said, although I came up and auditioned, but he said, this is the guy. He can write, he can sing, and he makes a fair presence on stage, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's who we're going to go with. And I think everybody's just acquiesced to that. I said, sure, let's give him a try. And then it was up to me to try to do a good job. And Slaves and Masters is a great record. Whether you can't stand the change or not, it's still a great record. Really is.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Blake Thompson now. He says, what made you decide the right time was to go public with the alopecia that you did a couple of years ago?
I guess it's like a fine wine, not before it's time, Everything is timing. And it was an open secret. It wasn't like a big deal, wearing hair. How many people wear hair out there? Unbelievable. So, and I won't mention any names now that I'm here in the truth, but it was time for me to just say, to hell with all that, to hell with it. I had amazing support and love, of course, from my wife and family and people around me. And they just said, look, you actually look good. They go, a lot of guys can't do this look. He said, but you actually look more badass. So I said, okay, that's a step in the right direction, more badass. People said, well, was it because you did a metal album? And I said, well, no, but it coincided. It kind of came in like an apex, like when things come together, so to speak. It just happened that the timing was right. But it was the right thing to do at the right time, because I felt comfortable. You have to understand, this was not a decision that I made. This was because I was born completely with heads of hair and the whole bit. But I had an autoimmune deficiency. And I won't get into that and why, because it's going to upset some people. But that's what happened. And during the days when everybody was coming up with the Beatles, everybody had to have the hair. So what did I do? I went out and we got the wigs. Boom, boom, boom. And it worked. There was still some people didn't understand I wore a wig. So it worked pretty good. But never tried to say no. And I had people like my brother Glenn defending me and stuff. One time somebody was saying, how about that guy with the wig? And Glenn was ready to bust him. He was ready to hit him. I said, Glenn, this guy's an idiot. Just let it go. But when you have that kind of love, support, and understanding from people you admire, family, friends, compadres, come on, man. So I had to do it. I just said, it's time. I'm 70 years old. What am I waiting for? And I'm really used to it now. I'm really enjoying it. It's a freedom. It's a truth. In my opinion, in a world of lies, I'm finally living my truth. And I think that was an important personal message for me. If I'm going to speak the truth on Belly of the Beast, I'm going to be the truth. So here we are, people. Okay, like it or not, this is me.
Yeah.
And I think some people still don't have the courage to do that. Okay, I understand. I'm not judging them, not at all. But I just felt, for me, I had to be an example. And the love and support I got from the fans out there, it was overwhelming. It absolutely made me cry one night. I was just like tearing up, talking to my wife, looking at all these great comments and just saying, she said, see, they love you even more. And I went, you're so right. When you're down to earth, when you're real, they love you even more. And a lot of people said, boy, that's bravery, that's courage. of course, you had a few guys saying, like, what's the big deal? Hey, look, pal, what's the big deal? If it happened to you, it would be a big deal. It's all relative. It's all subjective. But,
100%.
and it was a big deal for 60 something years. It was a big deal, hiding in plain sight.
Was it a relief to finally let it go and be yourself?
Oh, man. Shower, everything. So easy to get dressed. Boom. You know what I mean? Really cool. I mean, for me, it's like such a burden is lifted psychologically, physically, optically. At first I said, because I had people, for example, when I get hired sometimes for these big private parties, one guy said, my people know you with the hair. Can you put the hair on? Yeah, that'll be another $10,000, but I'll put the hair on. Additional. And I would do it because it's costuming.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at everybody out there is costumed. You know what I mean? I think that was Glenn's. That was one of his remarks. He said, look, it's like Shakespeare said, the world is a stage. We're all actors. Everybody is a costume. Everybody. And that was a costume. So what's the big deal? Look at Kiss.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
They did it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
really. I mean, maybe now they'll, chuck it. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, for me, freeing, yes. Validating, yes. Relieving, yes. All of those words, all of the above and more. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And it's nice to hear you mention the words love and family and things like that, because it leads nicely to this next question from Missy the Moo, who says, I see you post videos with you and your beautiful little boy. Has having a child later in life changed you in any way? And what words of wisdom or advice would you like your son to remember as he grows?
Good question, Missy. Thank you for that. First of all, his name is Mateo, and Mateo means gift from God. And he is a gift from God. And my wife, we are blessed. We are really blessed at this stage of our lives. My wife, first of all, let me explain, is half my age. Okay. So it's not like she's an old woman or anything to have a kid. She's much younger than me. And she is just over the moon about the baby. And he's 10 months yesterday. And he's just a joy of my life. So Missy, what it does, as a good friend of mine said, having a child prolongs youth. And I feel like my youth has been prolonged. I am on the floor, on the baby mat, as we call it, this big mat that's got all his toys on and stuff. And I'm playing with him. And sometimes he's playing over there alone. I'm playing over here. And I'm like a kid again. And I catch myself and say, the innocence sometimes that we've lost, which is really something that I've always tried to keep, because I read the Stoics a lot, and they always say to keep that childlike innocence, no matter how old you are, how mature you are, what experiences you've gone through, you must keep a childlike innocence. The child is father to man. You must keep this innocence. It's a spark inside of you. And that's the spark I get from Mateo. It prolongs my youth. It makes me see a dog for the first time like he does. It makes me see a lion at the zoo the first time like he does. You look at the world in a completely different level and different eyesight and perception. And of course that's all parents. Oh, no, look at the, you do that. But what it does to you is enrich you again and really make you see the actual perception and his reaction to things. And it brings you back into that innocence. It's beautiful. Missy, it's a great question. And as I said, at this stage of my life, I can really enjoy him more because I have a daughter and 2 grandsons and all that. But I was on tour and I was working. I was working to supply everything they needed. And now I can actually enjoy this guy and make a creative, productive human being, and it's my greatest work. It will be. Yeah. Absolutely, Missy.
Well said, Joe. And just a final question, then back to the music. This is from Philip Bardat, or apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. He says, you've worked with so many different bands and musicians over the years. Is there anyone you would have loved to have worked with that you haven't done already?
Tough question. Most of the people I want to work with are no longer here. I've worked with a lot of people. It's true. I've been so blessed in working with so many very different people from, I can't start naming them now. It's amazing. I'm so lucky. But who would I want to work with now? What I really want to do now is maybe reach out into a different style, like maybe work with like a new guy that's coming up, this jazz guitarist. Do something maybe with jazz, do something more R&B, something like that. Stretch out a little bit that way, a little bit left, a little bit right. So there's a couple of names out there that maybe I'm interested in. But as far as really wanting to work with somebody, a lot of my heroes anyway, are not here any longer. And I just take their inspirations. So I can't really put my finger on that one. I'm very sorry, but the best I can come up with is a different format and a different style. I just got an offer, as a matter of fact, to take a lot of these Rainbow songs and put them in a jazz idiom on piano and guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm contemplating whether maybe I should do this at some jazz clubs. Might be interesting, to kind of Sinatra my way into I Surrender,
It's pushing boundaries, though, isn't it? It's trying something different and flexing different muscles.
Yeah, really. Because, you come to a point where you feel you've done it all.
Yeah.
Or you've done it enough. There's nothing new that you're doing, really. Another concert in another town, in another hotel room, not new. I'm still excited by them. Another record, I'm always excited by the new creation, but doesn't have the fizz that it used to have when you first had that immediate passion. Although my passion is great, my passion is also for stretching out and doing something I've never really done before. Belly of the Beast was something I hadn't done before, Going back maybe into my roots of melodic hard rock might be interesting now, because I really haven't put out an album like that in years. Really, in years. Maybe combining it with a little more style of metal and a little more this inside the AOR. I don't know. Making sort of a cake out of it, a different recipe. Something. So that's who I'd want to work with. I've yet to find. Any suggestions would be welcome.
Absolutely. And what I like to hear is it's coming across in your voice. You mentioned that you're staying young with the help of Matteo and things like that, but your enthusiasm is still there, and the thoughts of doing, I might do this, I might do that. It's nice to hear that you're not putting a stop to it. There's no slow down. I still have this desire to do something different, to be something different. I do. I really do. That's my new passion, and I'll tell you another thing. For example, I have a friend she's a great novelist. She's written about 13 novels, 14 novels. And she asked me for the last 2 books to write the foreword. She loves my writing and all this, my lyric. So I wrote the 2 new forewords to the recent book, and her publishers asked, does this guy write? We love the way he writes. And I said, I've not written my book yet. Yeah.
And that's really something I have to do. So I said, well, first I better attack my book, As far as a story, I have a story in mind as far as a novel, but maybe switch careers and become a writer or something like that. Because the publisher asked, so I said, well, maybe I've got it in there, hey, how do you like this? I don't know. It sparked my interest, I'll tell you that.
Everyone's got a book in them, that's the saying.
Yeah, well, can always sing on the side.
Sinatra, I Surrender, and then write your book. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. I'm very lucky and blessed to be able to do all that, honestly. Because according to my wonderful wife, who thinks I can do everything, and she's not wrong, in many ways I can, do a lot of things, but we don't have the time to do all those things. We have one life to live, and we have to pick and choose what we're going to do. in order to be really great at it, otherwise you're a jack of all trades and master of none. But, hey, you could be a comedian. I'll tell you what, and you could be this and you could be that. Where am I going to get the time for all this? Where do you find that? And here I am at the golden years of my life. So I really want to enjoy my life.
Yes.
Now, I've worked hard to come to this point. I want to enjoy my new son, the rest of my family, and whatever life throws at me, in the future. So, and then sometimes when I'm not really working or sweating here in this office, she's like, "You're not doing anything," and I'm like, "I'm thinking." I'm thinking about doing something.
Yeah. I love that. That's it. That's it. Do what makes you happy, Joe. That's all you can do. Do what makes you happy at this stage.
Absolutely. You know what? Exactly. That's what else is there in life? Try to find your niche, find something you can grab hold of, and hang on.
That is it.
Life's too short. When you get my age, you start to realize it. Youth is wasted on the young.
A great way to end this interview. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you for this last hour and a half by the looks of things. Thank you so much for your time. I've loved hearing all your stories as usual, and best of luck. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next, whether it is a Sinatra I Surrender or a novel or jazz, or I don't know. It's always exciting to see what comes next.
Paul, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure talking to you. Really, I really enjoy your company. So I hope to do it again sometime.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Joe. I've loved that. Been a pleasure. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
And yours, mate. All the best to you and yours.